Well, I think it's timely. Why don't we start up the video and take a look at that. Hi, I'm Tom Stutesman, and Victor, if you want to start the video, that'd be great. Victor, I don't think we're hearing anything here. Well, as we go through this few moments of technical paralysis, trying to make sure we got everything figured out, I am Tom Stutesman, and what we're going to be talking about once we get the video up and running is really what's going on today with CyberPatriot and Stellar-Xplorers. And these are two fantastic programs. And I'm wondering if the sound is back on yet.
Give me a second. I'm working on it. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Well, let me give you just a quick thumbnail sketch of my background. I've been in the industry for 41 years, and my background is in technology, and I've done quite a bit with cybersecurity, cryptology, working with the Department of Defense through a number of different partnerships with other companies. And what we're going to talk about today is CyberPatriot and Stellar-Xplorers. CyberPatriot is a program that's been around for over 10 years, and it's a fantastic program. I've been involved with it for 8 years. And what it really allows us to do is work with the youth and the cadets and get them truly engaged in providing a protection format, learning how to protect systems, learning how to take technology and truly utilize it for the good. And we also have a number of cadets who have gone on and actually use these skills in their everyday careers. So it's been exciting to be part of that. In fact, I look at the years that I've done this, and I find it more rewarding for me than I think some of the cadets, because to be able to share your passion and your skill and your interests is always a really strong thing. A little bit more about my background too is I also work with the Thomas Edison Innovation Awards, and I've been doing that for the last several years, and that has allowed me to actually work with SpaceX, work with Tesla, work with a number of other, including Steve Jobs, in development of innovation awards for new products and technology. And when you look at all of what CyberPatriot is, to really start out with, it is a fundamental program that is designed to take youth and teach them about computers and technology, number one, and number two is also provide them a foundation, a foundational thing to learn how to protect those systems. And it's done through a series of challenges that is put forth. And there's a whole competition, there's different groups of competition, and their competition is designed to essentially work them through the entire process. So what happens if you have an attack of a system? What are the things that you need to do to prevent have firewall technology or IP spoofing or any one of these things that when you get a brand new computer environment, how to protect it? And you get a series of challenges that are set up, and I think I hear something.
We can actually we can go live now. Apologize for the
Why don't we
technical.
go about 7 minutes into it and see what we can? Can you roll it up to 7 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we go a little bit further than that? Let's see what happens. You know, no demonstration or any presentation, if it goes perfectly, you know there's going to be a problem somewhere. So just keep in mind that as we go forward.
Let me try on this from this.
I would go 2 more slides forward if you could.
Slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
When it comes to jobs and skills, and we'll talk even more about that as we get a little bit further. There we go. This one's perfect. So when you look at Illinois, my experience in building up a CyberPatriot program and working as a mentor and a coach, you realize that it's not so much, okay, can you win awards? And the team got to nationals, and there are many, many good teams, multiple good teams that are part of the Illinois wing and the environment in the area that we live in. But really the proof of everything is, what did those young people do? What did those young cadets do with what they learned out of CyberPatriot? I've been 4 years removed from them, and I wanted to give you a little bit of update of what they did. So what you see right here is you see the team that actually went to nationals, and the first young lady, Jess, is currently right now serving with the Air Force. She's at the Air Force Academy. Our next gentleman, he is at Bradley University. The middle person over there, he is sitting there at the University of Maryland, but he actually is in the Air Force right now, and he is working cybersecurity. Don't even know really much what he does. I'll speak more about him in a second, but he's been pretty successful at that. The next one, he has been, he is at the Air Force Academy right now too. He is they have a cybersecurity team, competitive team at the Air Force Academy, and he is part of that. And then finally, our last member, he is at Harvard. So where have the folks gone with that? Well, the one in the middle, he's actually using his education and using his CyberPatriot experience and working for the Air Force today in cybersecurity. All of them continue on today, utilizing the skill sets that they were able to deliver and be able to work with. So the proof is what you see here. You've got academic proof, you have people who are doing well in their jobs, you have people who are leaders in society today, leaders in their academic careers. And that's a fantastic thing. That is one of the most rewarding things that as an adult you could ever get, because you can see the success in their eyes and what they've done. So let's talk a little bit about how the teams and the competitiveness is. First off, the competition starts, and everybody looks at when does the competition start, and the reality is the competition runs all year long. So anybody who says no, it really kind of starts in September, or the reality is you need to look at this as being a holistic entire year program, including during the summers. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too, but what ends up happening is there are online programs and skill sets and classes and things like that that are consistently going on through this whole program. So there's three basic competitive divisions up there. You have the open division, you have the all service division, and the middle school division. And we've competed in the all services division when I was part of the program. We also had a middle school division too. And the way we looked at it is we had basically the varsity teams, and then we had the junior varsity teams. And you started out in the junior varsity, which was a mixture of middle school, and down the road they became into the high school, and then they became part of the varsity team. Every one of them were all leaders at one point or time in the program. So we were very much engaged, and we competed with other CAP programs throughout the United States. We also, and by the way, when I say other CAP programs throughout the United States, there are actually CAP programs now that are part of CyberPatriot that are outside the United States. In fact, my son, who, by the way, is the one that was in the middle, who is now serving with the Air Force, he actually is part of a CAP program working with CyberPatriot in Germany. So it's kind of exciting to see the complete full circle of what's going on in working with that. So you have these 3 different divisions that are set up there, and then we compete as Civil Air Patrol in the All Services Division, and we work with the Air Force ROTC, Junior R2C programs, the Army Junior R2C programs, Marine Corps, etc. And we're all involved in that together, competing against each other in a lot of ways. So what do you have? What does the team look like? Well, first off, I'll talk a little bit about recruiting a bit and trying to get the right candidates into the program. First off, there is no wrong candidate really today. Everybody should really have some degree of computer skills. If you want to look at the competitiveness of the organization, you really have to take a step back and say, okay, what is the overall objective? Well, the overall objective in some cases is to win the competition. But most importantly, you really want to educate people and grow them. And you want them to actually continue training, but train the new folks, the new cadets who are part of the program. So the way it's set up is you have a coach, and there's usually a singular coach, and they're an adult member, obviously. And many cases, they are somebody who is, volunteered to this, have maybe some computer skill, but you don't really need that. You really need to have more of the ability to communicate and the ability to communicate with cadets. Then you have the cadet team. Now, everyone asks us, well, where do you find the cadets? Where do you find people who are really good at this, that understand computer technology and are able to really deliver on these kind of very tough competitive sessions? And the reality is a lot of youth today, a lot of cadets today have these computer skills. They have a lot of the knowledge or interest in it. And all you really have to do is uncover it and show them all the new things that can be done out there. You can download copies of VMs of Linux, all sorts of different technologies can be given online. When I first learned computers, and like I said, I was in the industry for 41 years, we used to carry around giant manuals with us and cards to computer punch cards. But the reality is today, everything is online. You've got Google, you've got YouTube. And in fact, when our organization, when our teams were training, we really didn't have a whole bunch of training sessions. We actually had online sessions. So we were sort of kind of like in the COVID times back then, where we didn't really all get together that often as a group, but we utilized the online capabilities to do our training and be able to facilitate that. And there's many different YouTube and technology classes that you can take online that are free, that give you some of the meals that you need to be successful in the competition. All you got to do, and somebody asked me one time, so what is the key thing that you look for in a candidate to be a really successful competitor at CyberPatriot? And I said, the thing that I saw the most, the ones that were the most successful had one key skill set, one very, very key skill set, and that was curiosity. They really were interested in learning. And those are the kind of people that you really gravitate to, become very good leaders in this kind of program. Then you have a technical mentor, and that primarily was my role. And my role technically, I actually felt that it was more important for the teams to actually train the other teams or to train themselves. So I would set up education programs where we would go through a presentation with some of the leadership, and the leadership would then pick a topic that they would then focus on in their training. So we might be looking at specific Linux commands to manage the network, or we might be looking at certain Cisco things. So one or two of the cadets would get engaged in that, learn everything they can about that environment, and then teach everybody else. And that kind of teaching built a very strong leadership skill set and public speaking skill set, because they not only had to present that information, but they also had to go out there and educate with that information. They had to train themselves, and that really was a very positive thing to do. So you have the technical mentor. Again, that's usually an adult, somebody who's kind of in the industry. And that is something that if you are starting up with these organizations, I just want to let you know that as part of the Illinois Wing, I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk with you, give you ideas on how to recruit people, what kind of cadets, what kind of training programs, what kind of training abilities and things that are out there, and how to structure the organization. Then you have team assistants. They're non-technical. They basically help set up the meeting rooms and making sure that when you do have training sessions, you have the all-important pizza, things like that. But those things, again, it's a small group. It's a very encapsulated group, and the competitors themselves really kind of run the show. You have to empower them. So that's kind of how the overall structure is. So what is a coach? Well, you look at it as being a teacher, a parent, volunteer. This is lots of great information to really gravitate to, but really it's got to be somebody that has great passion and interest in youth and cadets, and really wanting to be able to allow them to grow and to educate them and show them new ways of doing things, and excited and really deliver that message to them. I always said that, I was probably, in some cases, some of these cadets that I work with were maybe a couple of weeks ahead of me learning things. I had to keep up with them. And then sometimes I was way ahead of them, but I wanted them to be better than me. And so that's kind of a key thing to do. And again, the coach is really sort of the leader. They need to be part of and be there for everything. They may register up to 5 team members, and there's some caveats to how that's structured, and we can talk about that one-on-one if you ever have an interest. But the key thing is you handle the registration. Now, it does say in the bottom here, and I do want to emphasize that this is important, does not need to be an expert in cybersecurity. Well, again, it seems like, as in the early days of television, we seem to have a communications difficulty here. I would use the common phrase, Houston, we have a problem, and continue on. So without the slides behind that, let me talk through just a couple of the other things that are out there. When you work with a team, and we mentioned the fact of, what are the kind of people that you want to recruit and everything, you definitely want to find those cadets that have a curiosity, that are interest, and being able to certainly move things forward. And they also need to really kind of want to enhance their leadership skill. What you also want to do is understand how the competitiveness of this operates. What ends up happening is that we looked at our entire CyberPatriot as a full year program. So as it accumulates at the end of the year in the March-April timeframe with the national championship, realistically, it starts immediately right after that, where you have education programs. There is actually camps that you can go to, and some of them are now online because of COVID. And then also you have a series of training materials that you can go through. Now, you can take the standard training material that's out there, and there is actually great PowerPoint presentations. There's great things that are out there that you can actually use. But the reality is that you kind of have to work with mentors, and you have to build up some of your own content too. And what I always found was the best thing to do is really empower the cadets themselves to go out and actually do it. Let them learn, let them be able to, give them a topic or an area, and have them actually learn and be able to present that. So what ends up happening is that once you get to the point of the competition, there's a series of practice rounds that goes on, and those practice rounds, it's just like the real thing, but you have a longer period of time to actually go through the program and actually figure out how it's all working. Now, it looks like Victor says that we are back online. So I think if we can go and accelerate into like 30 minutes into this, we probably are at the right point. So Victor, if you want to do that, that would be great. Or if you just want to do the slides. You think maybe we just go do the slides and cut down time? So if you want to bring up the slides and go to slide, I want to say 15, I believe that's where we left off. We can go forward from there. And while he works that out, I will just continue talking. Hopefully that's okay. And by the way, I just want to let you know that the flight suit I'm wearing here today is actually part of the second part of the presentation when we talk about Stellar-Xplorers, because I actually, with my kids, when they were kids, went to space camp with them. And that adventure, and this is actually the flight suit you get at space camp, and I had to find some way of getting my kids to space camp, and I wanted to go too, so that's how we worked it all out. But I got to keep the flight suit, so that was important. Why don't we stop right there at 13, and we'll go right into 13 then, if that's okay. Thank you very much. So this is actually how the entire timeline, if we want to put it in display mode so we get the whole picture, that'd be great. And so this kind of just shows you the whole time frame of what actually goes on between the practice sessions and how it operates. And like I mentioned, the fact that it's a whole year program. So you constantly are looking at what you need to do. Now, during the summertime is a great time to go to camps and to be able to work through those kind of things. And what you find out is that if you engage the students and the cadets and you keep the sessions going in one form or another, it does build community as far as how they actually operate. Now, when we start looking at, let's see, where are we? Okay, yes, stop. That one, yes, very good. That's the one, number 13. There we go. Thank you very much. And so what this does, this shows you the time frame of the rounds, how everything goes through. And again, you have the exposition rounds, which essentially is your test time frame. It's designed to see how the team actually works together. Now, one of the important things we learned is that sometimes you might have a shy cadet, or you might have somebody who doesn't feel as comfortable. And I always believe in really getting your feet wet, getting experience in what you're doing. So what we used to do is we used to take somebody who was probably a little bit insecure in what they were doing, and we actually put them in front of the keyboard. And they actually had to run the commands and run the challenges and go through everything that runs the program. So what ended up happening is, if you look at how people learn, is that the visual representation, the typing of the commands, the going through the different parts, actually enhanced their skill sets as time went on, which was fantastic to see them grow with that. So we used to break it down. We used to have somebody that was basically driving. They were the person in front of the on the PC doing the actual challenges, and they were working with somebody right by their side who had more experience, who would be doing research and telling them what to look at and guide them through, and they would kind of spin off and try some things and then come back and actually work with it. So you really were building a functional team of 1 and 2 people working together, actually 2 to 3 people actually working together on a certain problem. And then you had somebody who was researching the next step and the next step. When you grew, you would get 1, 2, or 3 different challenges that you had to protect your system. It would be, let's say, a Linux server that's out there and you have to look at security and things like that. You would build upon that team set. So in the initial rounds, you were learning who is the best behind the keyboard, who is the best for the research, who is the best for all these different areas. And you build upon all that, and you would build those people up to do those kind of things. So that's when the training rounds, the acquisition rounds, and all these things come together. So when you get to round 1, when you're looking at the November time frame in this chart in black, you actually get to a point where, okay, everybody has already been through this process a number of times. Everybody knows their position. There's somebody that's going to be researching the problem. And that's really a key. You know, Google's great. Google is fantastic. In fact, a lot of the answers to many of the questions are never going to be found in sitting there and you know, going through manuals or going through YouTubes. It's actually something that you're going to find how to find the answer, where to look for the answer. So giving somebody that skill set and being able to learn of all the places to look is a great way of doing it. And by the way, that just builds confidence that they can do this. I always like to say that, you know, technology is moving so fast today. And if you look at it over the last 40 years, you know, things have changed so dramatically, and that now it's not so much what you can keep up here, because we only have about 100 terabytes of storage up there. It's actually what you can do and finding it, learning how to solve the problem and being curious on how to solve it. So a lot of different things. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the key things as we progress forward here is that you look at how things come together in the competition. You got the registration, which starts out. Then you have your training phase, and then you go through your competitive phase. So, and it works through different series of rounds, as you saw with the slide previously, all the way through to the end of the national competition. And the national competition is great. You get everybody that fills out their area in the platinum, and we'll talk about the different color code or the metal codes in a second. But they go through all these challenges, they get down, and then they end up being going and being invited to the competition where everybody gets together. Now, of course, COVID has changed that quite a bit, but you know, let's look positive down the road. It's going to be somewhat similar again. Let's go to the next slide. So this is kind of exciting when you look at the growth of this. And as I mentioned earlier, is that my son actually, who is right now in the Air Force, he's working with a CAP squadron in Germany that's doing CyberPatriot. So it's not just United States anymore. It's a global type of tournament and competition that gets you through. But look at all the people who've been involved in that. And you think of the requirements that are out there today for cybersecurity specialists is actually outpacing this. But every person that's part of this program, every person who does CyberPatriot, every cadet that's part of it has a great, fantastic opportunity for growth. Let's go to the next slide. And it continues on. I mean, this is where the job market is in many ways. Now, our fees are waived because of the fact that we are in the all-service division, which is fantastic. When I talk about Stellar-Xplorers, there actually is a fee and charge for that, slightly different, but the programs are very similar. And also, if you take a look at how the fees are set up and the organizations are set up, just to give you an idea that, you know, some of the other people that you're competing with. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about the technical mentors. We also talked about the team assistants. The key thing is really do make sure that you have buy-in from these people. I like seeing parents be involved, but I want to make sure that, you know, really it's the cadets that need to drive it. The cadets have to find the passion and the interest and the curiosity to make it go forward. And so making sure the parents also know what their position is, their support. So if they're telling their kids, hey, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that, it's not going to fly. The cadet has to be truly, uniquely interested in what's going on. Next slide. So every organization, the team roster, you put the roster together, you may have up to 6 on a team for the roster. The key thing to understand is that you can only have 5 that actually compete whenever you do a competition. Now, I want to make sure clear on this is that it is actually pretty interesting what happens if you have somebody drop or if you go to the nationals and you lost somebody. Well, that's where that extra person comes into play. They need to train, they need to work together, and it's a little interesting because, of course, they want to compete too. What we found is that this is usually a junior member of the team, somebody who, you know, just works with them. And then the next year, when somebody goes on or graduates out of CAP and goes into another program or whatever, then you have somebody who's already been built up and been part of that team. So it's kind of building a cycle. So you're always getting, and that's also the way we've used the middle school too, where the middle school is a foundational place where you're building some of those basic foundational skills that when they get to the varsity and they start being more competitive, they've got it there for them. Next slide. So again, when does it start and when does it end? So when you finally have this is the national competition for 2021 as it is scheduled right now. Again, this is obviously subject to change. I want to draw your attention to the bottom 3 lines out there. There is actually scholarships that are available for people, and when you win, you get some money for the students for scholarship. And that's fantastic. That's a great incentive. But I will tell you that the greatest incentive of all is finding and seeing a cadet find a challenge, be able to successfully accomplish that challenge, and being able to move forward with it. That's a huge, huge successful thing. You know, not all success is tied to financial rewards, but the reality is by seeing them learn and grow and then use that skill later in life is just absolutely major reward. Next slide. So how the rounds scored, you have 3 groups or 3 tiers out there, and the platinum tier is the only one that goes on to the nationals. The all service is slightly different as far as how they do the nationals, because it's the top 2 in the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, CAP, and NSCC. So you base it plus 1 wild card for that group. And so you're actually competing with all the other service organizations directly, as opposed to competing with the middle school, high school, and everybody. So it is actually easier for us to get to the national championships in some ways, but it's also more competitive, because if you look at the winners over the years, you'll find that a lot of them come out of the service academies, so the service organizations. Next slide. So the tier structure for the high school teams, which is pretty much what we focus on, you'll have a Cisco quiz and what's called Packet Tracer, which my son to this day as an adult still has nightmares of trying to learn this thing, but he actually now works on Cisco equipment on a daily basis, and he uses that skill set, which is amazing to see that. It's exciting to see that. So all the teams, they have to be, set up and eligible to compete for them. You get a competitive window of 2 days, starts on Friday, ends all the way through, so you get time frame to do this. But once you turn the key and you start, I mean, that basically is when the engine gets going on the time frame. Download emails are sent out Monday before competition to the coaches, so they understand what are the process and how everything may go. Next slide. So the National Youth Cyber Competition. Now this is interesting, because when I did this and started with this 8 years ago, it was basically just high school, and then they added middle school, which I thought was fantastic. And now they have cyber camps that are out there during the summertime, and they're also doing for seniors, which I look greatly forward to getting engaged with when I become a senior. But nevertheless, it really is a whole holistic type of environment now. And it's actually really exciting, because there's so many new things to learn. I like to say, to be very frank with you, as being a mentor, there were many times where I was like maybe a day or 2 ahead of some of the cadets. We were going to go study something in Linux, and it was going to be a new kernel, and it was going to be how to protect this new kernel, or something in Cisco. And I was sitting there cramming the night before. I mean, I hate to admit it, but these cadets, in many cases, were pushing me along in my education and trying to stay ahead of what they're involved in. Now, there's some places where I did have more skill than them, but they were kind of pushing me along too. So it's great that it's a holistic program. Next slide. And the tier levels, platinum is the key, because platinum is the top tier that's out there. You get to platinum by winning all the different divisions and doing well, and that's 30% of all the teams. Then gold is the middle tier, and then obviously silver is the bottom. Only platinum is the one that moves forward. So it's kind of key that you really kind of look at every competition as being something important to stage it and step up as you go through the program. Next slide. So now comes the flight suit with the space camp, the whole thing, Stellar-Xplorers. Now, we talked about CyberPatriot and went through the whole thing, and I apologize that this is an abbreviated presentation today, but you know what? Technology, right? You got to get used to it, and it always has issues occasionally, right? So Stellar-Xplorers is fantastic, and I've always had a great interest in space. I got to grow up and spend time on Merritt Island in Florida, which is right by Cape Canaveral and Cape Kennedy, and I got to see launches as a kid. And to this day, up until very recently, my father would call me and he said, "Hey, they got a launch. Are you going to watch it?" And I said, "Dad, I'm in Illinois. I can't see it from where I'm at." But nevertheless, I got to see the original SpaceX rockets go up and come back down, and hear the double sonic booms, and think the rocket was coming back down and landing right on top of my house. But it is an exciting thing. That kind of enthusiasm and that kind of curiosity and interest has driven my career personally to always be looking at technology, and space has just been such a huge part of it. So when I had the opportunity, and Colonel Fletcher actually turned me on interested in this, when I started looking into this program, I said, this is fantastic, because it's not just taking, like in CyberPatriot, where you're really looking at computer technology. It's actually saying, okay, in the future, how are we going to actually train people to be space experts and be able to do the space technology? And there's all sorts of things you have to really think about that make up a space launch. So everything from fuel to orbital, velocities to how much weight and capacity to the business need. Is it cost effective? What happens if you have a bad condition on the launch? All these things come into play, and you have these challenges that you have to work through and figure out how to actually get through the process. Let's go to the next slide. So it is a national high school. It's focused on the high school, and it's really involving all aspects of how a space launch comes together. Now, I've been very fortunate in my career to actually work with SpaceX on a couple projects. Had nothing to do with launching rockets, had everything to do with high performance computing. But it's really interesting to look how things have dynamically changed. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that as we look at computer technology and what CyberPatriot has done, you start looking at what's going on today with the space program. And in fact, the space program today is probably infinitely more exciting than it ever was during the shuttle launches and even the Apollo system, because it is now moving to a commercial. It's becoming a business. It's becoming really, to be very frank with you, it's becoming the next step. And it's becoming something that we're going to have jobs in that are going to be growing out of this everywhere you look. So when you look at that, you think of the students who are looking at space today, and you really want to get them excited about it, because there's going to be a lot of great career opportunities there for you. The Air Force Academy, obviously with the Air Force doing, the Space Force and how all these things are coming together, is just another stepping stone to what our future is going to be. So let's go to the next slide. So how is everything organized? And this is real crucial, because if you just listen to the CyberPatriot presentation, you now know the Stellar-Xplorers presentation. It's very, very simple and very similar in how it's orchestrated. So you have team directors, mentors, assistants, and competitors. Almost exactly. The team director, that's sort of your coach, and the mentors, again, that's the technical person who kind of helps out with everything. The assistants, again, parental assistants, making sure that everything kind of comes together. You have a meeting space and time frame, and everybody's calendar's up to date. And then, of course, the competitors, the key person, the key people to making this all work. Now, this is also partnered with the Air Force Association, just like CyberPatriot. So there's a lot of synergy between all this. Next slide, please. So team director, again, up to an adult can have up to 5 teams that they're managing. The competitors, 2 to 6. Cadets, CAP cadets do not need to be in high school, so you could actually have somebody who's in middle school and have them be in the program. However, if they are not part of the CAP, then they have to be in high school to be part of the program. This is a great advantage, especially because if you take a look at a lot of our cadets, they're in CAP for a reason. They have interest in aerospace. They have interested, in all the things that really make up this kind of program. So, we have a great opportunity to just kind of keep feeding them. And that's an important part. Keep feeding them knowledge and interest and opportunity, and they'll grow with it. And of course, the technical mentors. Now, as with CyberPatriot, as I mentioned earlier, I'd be happy to help you find some people who could be mentors to help with these programs. I work with a lot of folks in the industry who are currently still working and then also have retired. And I'd be happy to try to search out and find somebody locally that'd be able to work with you. Next slide. So space, this is one of the key things. So what's really interesting is I got to actually talk to the leadership that are part of Stellar-Xplorers. And what excited me is the fact that they actually were professors, actually a retired colonel in the Air Force who taught at the Air Force Academy. And actually taught a class that my daughter, when she was going to the academy, took. So I got to get all the information and actually take a look at some of the text and materials that are actually provided. And it's fantastic. There's an online space textbook that are part of the program, Understanding Space, and it talks about all the different components. And keep in mind the fact that this isn't just, oh, what does it take to get a rocket that weighs X number thousands of pounds, kilos actually, up into space and maintain an orbit. That's not just what it's about. It's about actually the business cycle of it too. What makes sense? What kind of testing? What kind of things that can actually be done? And you get quizzes that actually step you through this. Now let's go to the next slide. So this is what a quiz looks like. And I'm sorry this is a bit of an eye chart here, but it just shows you some of the things that you learn. Now, I went back and I took this quiz without looking at the book. And well, let's just say I need to go back to the book. But the interesting thing is that all this information is actually in the online program. And I went out and I took all the quizzes and then went back and found out where it's located in the book, which is sort of the way I kind of learn as life goes on. But the reality is it's all in there. And you look at some of these things and you're thinking, wow, this is really technical. This is really interesting to make all this stuff work. So next slide. So what does this scenario actually look like? Now, here's what I was going to do is I was actually going to, in the video, I had take a look at a scenario. But what I'm going to have to do here, since we don't have the video actually working in that section, I'm just going to go talk through the actual scenario piece of it, because it is in a very large PDF document. And the key thing about the scenario is that it actually will take you through all the design, all the time frames, all the technical things that you need to know, and get you all the way through the launch. And what's really cool about that is that it's not just the dynamics of engineering, it's the business cycle of it, it's the value cycle of it, it is what is the full technology. It is not just learning about launch windows and time frames and stuff like that, it's how to finance this, and is there business value, and also experimentation. What kind of things make a valid science experiment that would be in the International Space Station? All these things come into play as part of the scenario. And reality is that this not only gives you the ability to encapsulate all this great knowledge, but also, and this is the exciting part, it allows you to be creative, to really step back and say, let's think of something. What about building a cannon that fires steel tungsten rods into space? What could that mean? And these are all real stuff that are being thought by the scientists, and now suddenly you're going to have cadets that are going to be thinking about the same problem. And trust me, there are many cadets out there who have that knowledge and are interested in it. Next slide. So I wanted to point this out is who can apply. Obviously, similar to CyberPatriot, Civil Air Patrol is there. But I want to point out this one specifically is if you take a look at the 3 that are currently registered in the state of Illinois, there's no cap. And as part of CAP, I really would like to see, and anybody who wants to start a program like this, I'm more than happy to help out in any way I can to get it done and set that up. Next slide.
Sir, you have 3 minutes to your time that you wanted me to notify you of.
Thank you so much. And I think we're almost on track. So how do you recruit? YouTubes, fun exercises, determine people's interest, get them looking at some of the space things that are out there, looking at some of the text, get them excited, give them some kind of code to decrypt, all different types of things. And by the way, this isn't just in Stellar-Xplorers, this is CyberPatriot too. Really have them take a look at these technologies. I always like to say is that if you empower them and you build up the one key thing that I mentioned earlier on, that really drives somebody to be successful, successful competitor in this kind of program, is curiosity. The other thing too is computer teams, cadets that are into space and into computers, they know each other. They're playing the games together online. They're talking to each other. They have all that. And look for that curiosity. Look for the one, because that is the skill set. Sometimes they don't have to be totally bright on everything that's going on, but if they're curious, they will figure it out. And if you empower them to have that curiosity and make them successful in it, it will definitely drive them forward. Next slide. So how can I help? Certainly help you folks find virtual mentors. We live now in a more virtual world than we did before, and there are definitely people all over the United States. And in fact, even if my son or daughter, my daughter works in the Air Force also, and her husband are very much involved in their CAP program in New Mexico. So they're all out there. There are people out there that can help out and do things. And I can also help you to recruit. Now, that's my email address right now. I just got my CAP email address before this presentation this weekend, so I will have that up. But if you have any questions whatsoever, please contact me, and I'll help you work through whatever you need. And I think that's it. Let's try one more slide, and I believe that's all. That is it. So if there's any questions or anything, Carol, we can throw them out in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to ask in the last couple minutes that we have.
Yes, sir. Okay, so the questions that we had earlier from Benjamin. First of all, sir, we just want to thank you for your time. We want to thank you for also presenting and going through the technical difficulties that we had. So the first question was, did you participate in any of these events?
Actually, I participated when we talked about the CyberPatriot stuff. I participated as a mentor. I also was a coach, and our team went to the Nationals 1 year, and then we finished top in the regional all 4 years, and then top in Illinois all 4 years also.
Second question, sir. NCAP, do we focus on network security, information security, or end user education?
So the most part of the way I would approach that is the network security is number one if you want to be successful in the competition. Some of the other pieces of security, when you start looking at information security or database application security, things like that, the contest was more on infrastructure, which is the networking, the plumbing piece of it, than anything else.
And then last question, you talked about your uniform at the beginning. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? And that's the last question, sir.
Okay, so this is a fun little thing. I went to space camp with my kids. I always wanted to go to space camp when I was young. I saw a movie many years ago, and I thought, you know, I got to find some way of getting to it. Unfortunately, when you're in your 40s and 50s, they don't let you go to space camp. However, I found one caveat. If you have kids and they enroll, you can go as a parent-child. So my wife and I both went. This is my flight suit from space camp. And it was a blast. It was a lot of fun. I learned a ton. I got to do the flight simulators. I got to do the rocket launches. A lot of what you see, and this is not an advertisement for space camp, but it's a cool place to go. A lot of what you see as far as in Stellar-Xplorers come directly out of some of the exercises they teach you at space camp. So take a look at, there's a lot of nice YouTubes out there about how the program operates. So that's where this came from. No, I did work, like I said, I did work with USA and also SpaceX on a couple projects. So I've been out to Florida and working with them on their high performance computing, which is really the mission systems to get data up to the spacecraft and also the International Space Station. So there's equipment and technology that I worked on in building that.
Well, that was the last question. We want to thank you again for the technical difficulties that we've had, and that everything went great. And again, everyone, you will be able to see this recording at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Victor. Have yourself a great weekend. Bye-bye.
You too, sir.